We have what I think is the perfect conversation to share with you today. We had to schedule it way in advance, but if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by what's been going on in the world the last couple of weeks with the murder of Charlie Kirk, all the accusations that followed, all the other things that have been happening, this conversation couldn't have come at a better time. This is a great day for the Faithful Resistance podcast because we get to talk to Reverend Mary Katherine Morn, who is President and CEO of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, based, I bet, in Boston, right, Mary Katherine?
Cambridge,
okay, a close neighbor. And it's an international organization. Now, I know it has roots in resistance work all the way back to World War II, but would you tell us just a little bit about the birth of the service committee, what it was called back then, and how it's resisted over the years?
I'd love to. It's a beautiful, powerful story. And the last couple of years, we've really leaned into telling this story because I think so many of us are hoping for stories that we can tell to remind ourselves how resistance can be powerful and make a difference in our world. So the American Unitarian Association in the late 1930s was in close relationship with the Unitarian Church in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and got a call in 1939 asking for help. Asking that a minister come to Prague and support the community there because they were already starting to see the threats to individuals and communities of people because of Hitler's aggression into Czechoslovakia. They'd signed the Munich Accords, which promised that Hitler wouldn't advance on the country, but everyone knew that this would eventually happen. And so the story goes that it took 17 calls for the American Unitarian Association to find a minister who was able to say yes. And it was the Reverend Waitstill Sharp and his wife, Martha, who traveled in 1939 and set up an office in Prague and worked to support individuals who were being threatened by the government and getting people out of the country. And they did this work in Prague for only a few months because the aggression from the Nazis came very quickly. Their offices were raided. They managed to get out safely. And Waitstill actually came back to the United States to raise some more money for the work, knowing that so much more was needed. Martha came back later, and then eventually they set up work in Lisbon, in Portugal as well, and worked to support communities seeking escape and safety through the rest of the war. And so those roots of supporting people who are forced to leave home because of their identity, their religion, their gender, their citizenship, that's the heart of UUSC's mission, always has been, and is a powerful part of the work that we're doing right now.
My gosh, yes, 2025, and the need for resistance work. I don't know if it's bigger than in World War II, but it's bigger than it's been, it seems to me, in a very long time.
I'd love to say one more word on history, if I can, just that over time, through our relationships across the globe with partners working to support communities who are impacted by injustice, some of whom are displaced, what we've found is there are always millions of people facing this around the world. And that here in the United States, we've had systems that really have protected us from this kind of encroachment and persecution. And what we're seeing, of course, is the dismantling of those systems. What I appreciate so much are the words and support and solidarity of UUSC partners as we in this country are kind of discovering things and learning what it's like to be targeted for your ideas and so on. And that support and solidarity is such a source of hope and strength for me in these times. And that's one of the things I really strive to tell every Unitarian Universalist I meet, that we're really not alone in this. And it's a terrible, difficult time. We're facing very challenging things. And many, many people around the world are with us in solidarity, have lots to teach us. And we're not alone. We're really not alone. So the Resistance Network, you want me to jump into that? After UUSC, as we were preparing to respond after the election in 2024, we knew that there were a number of different possibilities, and the different possibilities created different paths that would be necessary for our work. One of the possibilities we charted was that the White House, the Senate, and the House would all have Republican leadership. And we didn't think this was as likely, but we knew that the impact of that would be particularly difficult and challenging because we've heard what they've been saying about targeting people who are trans, really objectifying and using people who are trans as a political division tactic, which is clearly what they did, but also people in migration. And so for our partners in the United States who are supporting communities and individuals who are trans and supporting people in migration, we were prepared to move money immediately to support these the groups we've been in relationship and to support them as they faced the immediate impact of the power change in the government and the ways we knew that there would be immediate and brutal actions taken against these communities. So that was the really significant part of our response. But we also knew that we wanted to be in solidarity with progressive people in the United States, including Unitarian Universalists, in our voices being heard, resisting this kind of dismantling of civil society and democratic norms and institutions, and the vilification and criminalization of people based on their identity, and also the criminalization of protest and dissent. And so the UUSC Resistance Network is a way that we wanted to be in community and provide, in the midst of the overwhelm, some simple ways that we as individuals can be responding to what's happening with executive orders, with ICE coming into communities, with National Guard being deployed. And not just in the United States, but also with actions that happen globally. The impact of the cuts, the blowing up of USAID has been significant on many UUSC partners around the world. And so the UUSC Resistance Network was another part of our response, saying, let's find a way to bring together in action, concrete action. Mostly they're very small actions, simple things that each of us can do, but that we can do together to remind us that we're all we all need to be part in whatever way we can of the response to this, because that's how we're going to turn it back. And that's how we are going to bring the power of the people to reclaiming our democratic values. And I guess I'd go so far as to say reclaiming our country.
Yes, yes. Overwhelm is the word that really resonates with. Just every morning, watching the news, listening to the news, reading the news, just overwhelm again and again. So what are the simple things that you're suggesting in the Resistance Network?
Well, I'll tell you what's coming, what we expect is coming. The administration appears further emboldened to place restrictions on free speech, as we are all aware right now, and further emboldened to put restrictions on philanthropy and human rights organizations, but also charitable organizations and religious organizations. And as they are feeling emboldened, we are anticipating some restrictions that will be issued through executive order. And we're anxious to let our Resistance Network know so that we can, each of us, register our concern and not to comply in advance, and to express that this trend toward restricting civil society is undemocratic and work together to resist it as possible. Another thing that we've done at UUSC that isn't an ask for the Resistance Network, but we've signed on to a statement called, how the advice, the counsel is don't comply in advance, right? And so a group of philanthropy, I think there are over 700 organizations now that have signed on to a Unite in Advance action. So while UUSC's Resistance Network is a relatively small, we're still growing this network of people who are lifting their voices and participating in resistance. Our little resistance network, joined together with these 700 organizations, creates a real movement and a real voice to ensure that a narrative of democracy and human rights is present in the conversation, and we know eventually that it will prevail.
What do you find people responding to when they discover the Resistance Network and say, yes, I want to do something? What's resonating?
So mostly I'm talking with individuals who are part of congregations, and most of our congregations are engaged in local work that's so important. I know that you all have done some Know Your Rights work, and that many congregations doing this kind of work. So when I'm in conversation with Unitarian Universalists who are part of communities, what I find is they're hoping for a pathway to being part of something larger. And there are concentric circles, right, in which we can live our faith, take our values into action. When we're able to share our work with partners and our being part of solidarity networks within movements, I think what people are excited about is having the opportunity to widen the possibility of their influence to a broader movement, and to be, again, part of something larger than ourselves and our neighborhood. Almost everybody that I talk with is engaged in some way, even though the other thing I most often hear is I don't know what to do. But when I ask, it's almost always the case that we have done things. We've done many things, and helping to lift up the UUSC hopes through the Resistance Network, not just to push forward our actions that we're working on in movements or in relationship with our partners, but also to lift up really good work that's happening in congregations. That hasn't really gotten going yet, but that's where we're hoping to get. We also have, through the Resistance Network, and I know that a number of congregations have taken advantage of some resources about, like, the work Jefferson UU is doing for Know Your Rights, resources on how to support communities who need to know their rights, and all of us who need to know our rights in the midst of the threats that we're facing. So that's the big picture. I think for me, the thing that is most impactful is just knowing that every couple of weeks, that's kind of our pattern, every couple of weeks, you'll have an opportunity to do a thing. And it might be to write to the State Department about how aid is getting into Burma after an earthquake. That's an example of something people supported us with, that doesn't get a lot of attention. And so it doesn't take a lot of voices for attention for that to be noted. It really does make a difference. And then, as I said, we have upcoming actions that we anticipate that we are deeply concerned about and that threaten the very fabric of our shared life through the criminalization of some of our human rights work and the we fear, the removal of 501c3 status, or the threats to remove 501c3 status. So getting as many voices in that resistance as possible is critically important right now.
You really think that's a possibility?
So we've heard dozens of rumors about the efforts that are being made. I can tell you this, that 3 groups, activist groups who are involved in advocacy related to Palestine, had restrictions put on them last week. We have seen strategy documents that describe the way they hope to dismantle the power of the progressive left, not only by messing with their tax-exempt status, but I read a document last week that talked about their hope to freeze funds. So we are working on a half a dozen different mitigation strategies to find ways so that whatever comes down, we have a path to reduce to the best of our ability the obstacles that they place in front of us, the barriers to us doing our work.
So we're recording this conversation the day after the Charlie Kirk funeral. I don't know if you watched any of it or if you've seen news coverage of it, but I just would like your reaction, your thoughts.
We've been speaking about the murder of Charlie Kirk as political violence, and I think that it is possible that that's an appropriate way to describe what happened. We're not clear what actually happened. There was a gunman. What I would like to lift up is that last Sunday, UUSC honored the memory of Honduran activist Juan Lopez, who has spent his life defending water rights and land rights and his community from illegal mining that's been happening there. He's spent time in jail for his activism, and in a visit with us 2 years ago, he shared that he knew that his life was at risk because of the work he was doing. 1 year ago, last Sunday, he was murdered when he was leaving the church where he was worshiping in community. We're deeply concerned about political violence wherever it happens. Many of our partners have been impacted by political violence, and we will always stand. We will always speak out and advocate for all of us to find ways to resolve our differences and to create conditions that make it possible for people to be free to express their views. We don't know all that happened with Charlie Kirk. I know that political violence is a matter of deep concern, and I know it because Juan Lopez gave his life, and we mourn what might have been. And we give thanks that he devoted so many decades to defending human rights and land rights. It's a terrifying time.
I know you are a busy woman, and I just have two more questions. They're not easy questions, but they're just two more. One is, at the funeral, President Trump said, he said of Charlie Kirk, he did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for him. And then went on to say, as president, that's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. How do we deal with that?
I read that, Chris, and I think that for me, focusing on the way we bring the value of love at the center to all that we do is the more important response. Not to focus on what he is saying or doing, but to continue in whatever ways we can, in every way we can, to bring our values of the dignity and worth and power of every person to our public voice, to the ways we're organizing our communities, and to the work we're doing for change in the larger world, both here in the United States, but also around the world. I don't think I have the energy, the time, or the heart to parse much that he says.
Speaking of energy and heart, I would like to end by asking you how you ground yourself in your faith to help you do this work.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I've been a minister for a long time, so I've been going to church on Sunday morning all my life, pretty much. And as a professional, a lot of it, but the rhythm and the gift of gathering in faith community to support one another and to challenge one another to live our values is such an incredible gift, and never more than in the last year. So Sunday morning means a lot to me. I really appreciate having, when I'm not somewhere preaching, having a home church where I can be part of community in this way and sing together. The other spiritual practice that is so important to me, I have really learned most vividly from UUSC partners, and that's to, while we are not closing our eyes to the suffering and the threats in the world, to also not close our eyes to the beauty and the joy in the world. Every partner I've ever met, every UUSC partner I've ever met has such a beautiful practice of lifting up joy and also creating and preserving beauty in our world, because that's really why we do this work and why we are striving so hard for the world we know is possible. So community, connection with community, and also the practice of finding, discovering, remaining open to the beauty and joy that is also around us all the time.
I knew I would feel better after this conversation. And we really appreciate you joining us on Faithful Resistance. Best of luck to all of us and to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for all that you're doing.
I bet you know someone, maybe a few someones, who could use a little encouragement these days. A little encouragement to not get stuck in the overwhelm or the hopelessness. So take a few seconds and share this podcast on your Facebook or Instagram page and encourage your friends to check it out. You know, we want these conversations to get you thinking about ways you can faithfully resist, and the more who hear about them, the better. Also press that subscribe button when you watch it on YouTube. And if you have ideas for people to interview, please email us at faithfulresistance@jeffersonunitarian.org. And it's probably more important than ever to say, keep doing the next right thing.
Go out, do the next right thing.